Mr. Coleman, 30 seconds.
Well, and that makes sense only, but we have to realize that we are part of a global community. And for us to think that we can not have interactions with other countries and be affected by what's going on in those countries and what's happening in our countries is probably not going to happen, okay? And so I think we have to make sure that we're prepared for those things that could affect us. And that's what, as far as security is, that's what our military should be doing.
Thank you. Question, the next question says, should Citizens United be overturned? Do you support legislation to require greater disclosure of campaign contributions by organizations? So Citizens United allowed corporations to actually run issue, not just issue ads, but campaigning, electioneering ads, and opening up the room for dark money. Should it be overturned?
Here's what I think. I think that that legislation is designed to get the money out of politics. Isn't that the idea behind that? So, you know, we hear people talk about how we want the money out of politics.
Actually puts more money into politics.
Right, what I'm saying is people want something that takes the money out of politics, right? And so, I just have to say, every single one of us has the ability to do that. Every election, you're presented with candidates who don't raise money, who aren't bought and paid for by corporations, but you're not choosing them. Does it really matter how much somebody spends on a horrible candidate? Honestly, are we that swayed by television? You are? I'm sorry for you if you are. I think most of us are independent. We have minds we can think for ourselves. Just because we see a TV commercial or hear somebody say something is awesome doesn't mean it's awesome. And we have the ability to change that by simply voting for candidates who don't raise money. And we never do that. So we're being hypocritical. But I do think that there should be transparency. So in other words, if they are donating, they should be very clear on who they've donated to, and all that should be open for everyone to see.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman.
I think that we have to repeal the law and get rid of Citizens United. I don't think there's no place in political government for that to happen. I think it does slant elections, and we have to do some campaign reform to keep it out. If you don't raise money, you can't win. It's just that simple. And you know, you can't be engaged in the process if you don't raise money. Now, we have to make sure that through the system that we don't allow certain groups, organizations, businesses to monopolize the process, okay? And so I think there should be a limit on to how much they give, how often they give, and there has to be a level of transparency so that certain groups like the Koch brothers don't take over our federal political system. And so it has to happen.
Mr. Senkush, 30 seconds.
I've raised less than $2,500 for my political campaign, and here I am engaged in the debate. To suggest that you have to spend money to be engaged or involved, I completely disagree with. And again, if you folks make the decision to choose the candidate who isn't bought and paid for, that's one of the reasons I'm in the race.
Thank you. The next question, and we'll wrap up in the next 5 minutes or so we have time for a reception. The next question goes first to Mr. Coleman, and it says, do you think we should raise the federal minimum wage? Why or why not? Absolutely.
I think the minimum wage is far too low. A family cannot take care of itself off of $7.50 an hour. An individual cannot take care of themselves off of $7.50 an hour. So I do think the minimum wage has to be raised, and I don't think you do it all at one time. I think you do it in increments and get from $7.50 to a larger level. Some people say $10.50, some say $15, and I think that depending on where you are, $15 in South Bend is a lot different than $15 in Chicago. But I think we have to raise minimum wage in this country, and it has to happen soon.
Mr. Senkush.
So I think the minimum wage law and the concept of that is probably one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of politics. Most of us believe that raising the minimum wage law is compassionate and helps people. But the fact may be that it doesn't. And here is the argument for that. Or maybe it does help some, but it can really hurt the lowest among us. And here's the situation, how it can do that. So, although the government can assign an arbitrary wage to your labor, it cannot change the value of that labor, no matter how hard it tries. So, if you are an unskilled worker who doesn't have any skills, and you can find work that pays you $8 an hour because you bring $8 an hour of value to the job, and we raise the minimum wage above that level, then the poorest among us and the least skilled among us can be hurt because they can be put out of the market. And so we have to be cognizant of that when we talk about minimum wage laws. The intent is good. I'm not so sure that they always shake out that way. I encourage you all to take a look at that and check out the other side of the issue and decide for yourself whether you think that it truly does accomplish the goal that it's set out to do.
Mr. Coleman, 30 seconds.
And I don't know if we can adequately deal with this in 30 seconds, but for us to say that we would hurt somebody, giving them an opportunity to make enough money to take care of their family, to put a roof over their head, food on the table, to send their kids to school, to give them the same affordability that everyone else has. I don't know how that hurts them. And again, it further creates the gap between the have and the have-nots. And that's what we have to get away from in this country. And increasing the minimum wage helps us do that.
Thank you. The next question goes first to... Well,
That wasn't, okay, I'm sorry, okay. It's fine, you're good.
you can do like many establishment politicians and rope it into your next response. Do you have guidelines to prevent a fiscal collapse as occurred in 2008?
Is that to me first? So, largely, government enacted policies were behind the collapse. Worse, we bailed out the people who did the worst things, and so this is just an overall manipulation of the free market, which I disagree with. It shouldn't be propping things up. It shouldn't be rescuing people who fail. It should just be allowed to work, not pick winners or losers. Let things happen the way they happen. If a company goes out of business, it's because there's no value in what they're selling. People are not choosing it. And so there's a message there. That message is, the market doesn't like what you have to offer. You're doing something wrong. Your good is antiquated, or it's not good, or the quality is bad. So that's how the market functions. And when we get involved with government and we bail out bad companies that made mistakes, it's the wrong approach.
Mr. Coleman.
Well, again, I think that for me, what we've seen in a way was tragic. But for us, if we hadn't bailed out those people, as you categorize it, what would have happened to all the people that worked in those industries across the country, in the auto industry, in the banking industry, that went to work every day to take care of their family? And so we're going to punish millions of people that work in this country because 3 or 4 people took advantage of systems, okay, and abused the financial system. For us to punish the most because of the action of the least, I don't think makes sense for us to do. I think that we have to make sure that we make those people accountable, excuse me, and not punish everyone. And if the government had stepped in, okay, and provided the service that they did in 2008 to save our economy, that's what would have been happening. We would have been punishing the masses people in this country. We would have punished them because of what a few greedy, selfish people had done in trying to capitalize on our economy. And so I would not support your premise at all.
Mr. Senkesh, 30 seconds.
Yeah, so you allow companies to to function when they couldn't function on their own. So you're propping up something that failed, and you're saying the premise behind it is because we want to save the jobs of those people. But in reality, what more than likely would have happened is those assets would have been purchased at a much lower price. The people who would have taken the loss would have been the owners of those assets who were devalued, not the workers, and then probably put back to work with the new owners back in the factories with lower overhead and a better idea and a better plan to make a better product. That's the way the market works, and I'm sorry about it.
Thank you. Now, they have gone a full 75 minutes playing 20 questions here, so that is great. We hear a lot about stamina in this election.